The princess watched the human fight unarmed. Her heart chose him at once. Part 1. Princess stood at the edge of the royal viewing gallery and looked down at the pit of judgments. The arena was old, older than her father's reign and older than his father's before him. The sand below was dark with centuries of blood. The walls were high and smooth so that nothing could climb out. This was where the empire sent its criminals, its enemies, and its entertainment. Today the entertainment was human. Had never seen a human before. She had heard stories, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories about the strange soft creatures from the distant Sol system. They had no claws, they had no scales, they had no venom or natural armor. Their bones broke easily. Their skin tore like paper. By every measure that mattered to the people, humans were weak. The human vessel had been captured 3 weeks ago when it strayed into space. Her father, Emperor, had declared the crew guilty of trespassing. The punishment was death in the arena. It would be quick, he promised. A mercy for such fragile things. Watched the first human enter the arena. He was a small male with gray hair and shaking hands. He faced a warrior who stood 7 feet tall and carried a blade as long as the human was high. The fight lasted 4 seconds. The crowd cheered. The second human was a female. She was braver than the first. She picked up a rock and threw it at her opponent before he cut her down. The crowd laughed at her courage, felt something twist in her stomach. The third human walked into the arena, and the crowd grew quiet. He was not large by standards. He stood perhaps 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and dark hair cut short. His eyes were brown like tree bark, and they moved across the arena floor with a focus that recognized. She had seen that look in the eyes of her father's generals when they studied maps before battle. This human was not afraid, he was thinking. His name was announced as Cole. He had served as security officer on the captured vessel. Unlike the others who had pleaded for mercy or screamed in rage, Cole had said nothing during his trial. He had simply watched. Now he walked to the center of the arena and waited. The warrior chosen to face him was a soldier from one of the lesser noble houses, was young and eager to prove himself. He carried the traditional curved blade of his family and wore light armor that showed off the blue scales covering his body. He was faster than most, and he knew it. Cole had nothing, no weapon, no armor, just the simple gray clothes of a prisoner and his bare hands. The signal was given and charged. Expected the human to die. Everyone expected the human to die. His blade whistled through the air in a strike that should have cut Cole in half. Cole was not there. He had moved at the last moment, stepping to the side so smoothly that it looked like water flowing around a stone. His blade cut only air. Before the warrior could recover, Cole was behind him. The human did something with his hands that could not follow. He touched in 3 places, quick strikes that seemed too soft to matter. Stumbled. His blade arm dropped to his side as if the muscles had stopped working. He tried to turn, but his legs would not obey him. Cole struck once more at the base of skull. The warrior collapsed face down in the sand and did not move. The arena was silent. Gripped the railing of the gallery so hard that her claws left marks in the stone. Her twin hearts were beating in a rhythm she had never felt before. It was not fear. It was not excitement. It was something else, something she could not name. The crowd began to murmur. This was wrong. This was impossible. A human had just defeated a warrior in single combat. A human with no weapons had knocked out an armed and armored soldier in less than 30 seconds. His father rose from his throne. Emperor was old, but he was not weak. He had killed 100 enemies in his youth and conquered a dozen worlds. He had never seen anything like what he had just witnessed. The Emperor raised his hand, and the crowd fell silent. He asked Cole how he had done this. His voice carried across the arena like thunder. Cole looked up at the royal gallery. His eyes found the Emperor, and he spoke in a voice that was calm and clear. He said that his people had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They had learned that strength was not the only path to victory. They had developed ways to use an enemy's power against them. They had studied the body and found its weaknesses. They had turned combat into an art. The Emperor asked if all humans could fight like this. Cole said no, but enough of them could. The crowd erupted in noise. Some were angry, some were afraid. Some demanded that the human be killed immediately before he could share his secrets with others. Some wanted to study him and learn what he knew. Said nothing. She simply watched the human standing alone in the arena surrounded by enemies. He did not beg for his life. He did not threaten or boast. He simply stood there with that same calm focus in his eyes, waiting to see what would happen next. She realized that she wanted to know more about this creature. She wanted to understand how something so fragile on the outside could be so unbreakable on the inside. Her father made his decision. The human would not be executed. Not yet. He would be taken to the palace for study. The Emperor wanted to know everything about human fighting techniques. Perhaps they could be useful to the Empire. The guards came for Cole. He did not resist as they bound his hands and led him away. But as he walked toward the arena gate, he looked up one last time at the royal gallery. His eyes met. It lasted only a moment. Then he was gone, swallowed by the shadows beneath the arena walls. Stood at the railing for a long time after everyone else had left. She could not stop thinking about those brown eyes and the quiet strength she had seen in them. She could not stop thinking about the way he had moved, like nothing she had ever seen before. She told herself it was curiosity. She told herself it was scientific interest in an unusual specimen. She told herself many things as she walked back to her chambers in the palace. But deep in her chest, in the space between her two hearts, something had changed. Something had awakened that she did not yet understand. The princess had watched the human fight unarmed. And without knowing it, her heart had already begun to choose. The princess watched the human fight unarmed. Her heart chose him at once. Part 2. The cell where they kept Cole was nicer than a prison should be. It had a bed with clean sheets and a window that looked out over the palace gardens. The walls were stone, but they were smooth and white. There was even a small table with books in the language, though Cole could not read them. The Emperor wanted his prize specimen comfortable. Comfortable prisoners talked more freely. Cole did not talk much. The interrogators came every day with their questions about human fighting techniques. He answered some questions and stayed silent on others. He was polite but firm. He would share enough to stay alive but not enough to make humans a target for the Empire's military interest. Princess watched these sessions through the observation window. She told herself she was gathering intelligence for her father. She told herself it was her duty as a member of the royal family to understand potential threats to the Empire. She did not tell herself the truth. The truth was that she could not stop thinking about the human since the day in the arena. On the 5th day, she stopped watching through the window. She walked into the cell herself. Cole was sitting on his bed when she entered. He looked up at her without surprise, as if he had known she would come eventually. The guards started to follow her inside, but she waved them away. She wanted to speak with the prisoner alone. Cole stood up. He did not bow or kneel as custom demanded. He simply looked at her with those calm brown eyes and waited for her to speak. Asked him why he had not killed in the arena. He could have struck a killing blow instead of just knocking him unconscious. Why did he hold back? Cole thought about the question for a moment. Then he said that where he came from, killing was sometimes necessary, but it was never the goal. A true warrior knew how to end a fight without ending a life. That was the higher skill. Did not understand. In culture, mercy was weakness. You killed your enemies or they would rise again to kill you. This was the way of the universe. Cole asked her if she truly believed that. She did not answer. Instead, she asked him about Earth. Cole spoke of his for the first time. He described a planet that sounded like a nightmare to ears. Earth had extreme temperatures that could kill in minutes. It had predators with teeth and claws larger than any blade. It had diseases that wiped out millions. It had earthquakes and floods and fires and storms. And yet humans had survived. More than survived, they had thrived. Asked how could such weak creatures conquer such a dangerous world? Cole smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile. He said that humans were not the strongest or the fastest or the toughest creatures on Earth, but they were the most stubborn. They refused to give up. They adapted to every challenge. They learned from every failure. They kept going when any sensible species would have quit. He said that humans had a word for this quality. They called it endurance. Sat down on the chair across from his bed. She had come here to interrogate a prisoner. Instead, she found herself listening to a teacher. Cole asked her about herself. No one had ever asked the princess about her own life. She was a symbol of the empire, a prize to be married off to whatever noble would bring the most advantage to her father's reign. Her thoughts and feelings had never mattered to anyone. She found herself speaking. She told Cole about her childhood in the palace, surrounded by servants but always alone. She told him about her studies in history and poetry, subjects that her father considered useless for a female of her station. She told him about her arranged marriage to Duke, a warrior twice her age who collected wives like trophies. Cole listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked a simple question. What did she want? Stared at him. No one had ever asked her that before. She did not know how to answer. She had never been allowed to want anything. Cole said that on Earth, people believed in something called choice. The idea that every person could decide their own path, make their own future, love who they wanted to love. It was not always easy and it was not always possible. But the belief itself was powerful. It gave people hope. Asked if humans truly lived that way. Cole admitted that they tried to. They did not always succeed. Humans could be cruel and selfish and short-sighted. They made terrible mistakes and hurt each other in countless ways. But they also created beauty and kindness and love. They protected strangers and sacrificed for ideals and stood up for those who could not stand for themselves. He said that being human meant having the freedom to choose what kind of person you wanted to be. The princess stayed in that cell for 3 hours. She returned the next day and the day after that. Each visit lasted longer than the one before. The guards whispered about her strange interest in the prisoner. The servants gossiped, did not care. For the first time in her life, she felt like someone was seeing her. Not the princess, not the emperor's daughter, not the future wife of a duke, just her. Cole never asked for anything. He never tried to use their conversations to gain advantage or escape. He simply talked with her as an equal, sharing stories of Earth and asking questions about her world with genuine curiosity. Began to understand what she was feeling. It was something she had read about in the forbidden poetry books hidden in her chambers. Something she had always believed was just a story invented by writers. But it was real. It was terrifying and wonderful and completely impossible. The princess of the empire was falling in love with a human prisoner. And she had no idea what to do about it. 2 weeks after the arena, a message arrived at the palace. Duke was coming to finalize the marriage contract. He would arrive in 3 days. Read the message with shaking hands. Her time was running out. Soon she would belong to the Duke, and everything she had begun to feel would be crushed under the weight of duty and tradition. That night she went to Cole's cell one more time. She did not speak of the Duke or the marriage. She simply sat with him in silence, watching the moons rise through the window, trying to memorize the feeling of being near someone who made her feel alive. Cole seemed to sense that something was wrong. He reached out and took her hand. It was the first time they had touched. His skin was warm and soft and so fragile. She could have broken his fingers without effort. But in that moment, holding his hand, she felt like he was the strong one, and she was the one who might break. The princess watched the human fight unarmed. Her heart chose him at once. Part 3. Duke arrived at the palace with 50 armed guards and a train of servants carrying gifts. His ship landed in the royal courtyard with enough noise to shake the windows. He wanted everyone to know he was here. Watch from her balcony as the Duke stepped out of his vessel. He was tall even by standards, nearly 8 feet of muscle and dark green scales. His face was marked with ritual scars that told the story of his 14 honor duels. Each scar represented an enemy he had killed in single combat. He wore them proudly. The Duke looked up at her balcony and smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had cornered his prey. The formal dinner that night was a torture that endured in silence. She sat beside while he spoke of his conquests and his wealth and his plans for their marriage. He would take her to his fortress on the ice world of. She would give him heirs. She would manage his household. She would be grateful for the honor. He never asked what she wanted. He never looked at her as if she were a person with thoughts and feelings of her own. To him, she was property, a prize he had won through political maneuvering. Thought of Cole and the way he listened when she spoke. She thought of his gentle questions and his warm eyes. She thought of the feeling of his hand in hers. She excused herself early, claiming a headache. Barely noticed her leave. He was too busy boasting to her father about his military campaigns. That night she went to Cole's cell. He knew something was wrong the moment he saw her face. She told him about the Duke. She told him about the marriage that would happen in 1 week. She told him about the life that waited for her on that frozen world, serving a man who saw her as nothing more than a breeding trophy. Cole was quiet for a long time. Then he asked what she wanted to do. Laughed, but there was no joy in it. What she wanted did not matter. She was a princess of the empire. Her duty was to obey her father and honor her family. Her feelings were irrelevant. Cole stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the moons for a moment before speaking. He told her about a concept that humans held sacred. They called it freedom. Not just the freedom to act, but the freedom to choose who you wanted to be. On Earth, people had fought wars over this idea. They had died for it. They had killed for it, because they believed that every person had the right to control their own destiny. He said that he could not tell her what to do, but he could tell her that she deserved to be happy. She deserved to be with someone who loved her for who she was, not what she represented. She deserved to make her own choices. Asked him what he would choose if he could. Cole turned to face her. For the first time since she had known him, she saw emotion in his eyes, something deeper than calm acceptance, something that looked like longing. He said that if he could choose anything, he would choose her. The words hung in the air between them. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The moment stretched out like a thread of silk about to break. Then a guard opened the door. Duke stepped into the cell. His eyes moved from to Cole and back again. His expression changed from curiosity to understanding to cold fury in the space of a heartbeat. He asked the princess what she was doing in a prisoner's cell at this hour. His voice was calm, but there was death in it. Straightened her spine. She was still royalty. She told the Duke that she was interrogating the prisoner on behalf of her father. It was not his concern. Laughed. It was an ugly sound. He said that he knew what interrogation looked like. This was not it. This was something else entirely. He walked toward Cole with slow, deliberate steps. He asked if this was the human who had defeated a warrior in the arena. He said he had heard the story. He had found it hard to believe that such a weak creature could accomplish such a thing. Cole did not back away. He stood his ground and met the Duke's eyes without flinching. Grabbed Cole by the throat and lifted him off his feet. The Duke's claws pressed against the soft human skin, drawing small beads of blood. He said that perhaps he should test the human's skills himself. Shouted for him to stop. She grabbed at the Duke's arm, but he shrugged her off like she was nothing. Cole did not struggle. He hung in the Duke's grip and spoke in a voice that was strained but steady. He said that he would be honored to face the Duke in fair combat. If was truly a warrior, he would not kill an unarmed prisoner in a cell. He would meet his enemy in the arena where victory would mean something. His eyes narrowed. The human was challenging him. This weak, soft creature was actually challenging a Duke of the Empire to a duel. He dropped Cole to the floor. Cole fell to his knees, gasping for breath, but his eyes never left the Duke's face. Smiled that hunter's smile again. He said that he accepted the challenge. Tomorrow at noon in the Grand Colosseum. If the human won, he would go free. If the human lost, which he certainly would, his death would serve as entertainment for the noble houses. He turned too. He said that she would watch from the royal gallery. She would see what happened to creatures who thought they could rise above their station. Then he was gone. The guards followed him out. The door slammed shut. Knelt beside Cole on the cold stone floor. Her hands were shaking as she examined the wounds on his throat. The cuts were shallow, but they would leave scars. Cole touched her face gently. He told her not to worry. He had faced worse odds before. Asked how he could be so calm. Was not like. He was older, smarter, faster, stronger. He had cybernetic enhancements that made him nearly superhuman. He had killed 14 opponents in honor duels without ever losing. Cole smiled. He said that humans had a saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Did not smile back. She told him that would not fight fair. He would cheat if necessary. He would do anything to win. Cole said he was counting on it. Then he pulled her close and held her. She could feel his heart beating against her chest. It was slower than she expected, steady and strong. He whispered that whatever happened tomorrow, she should remember that she had a choice. She always had a choice. No one could take that from her unless she let them. Closed her eyes and breathed in the strange, warm scent of him. She memorized the feeling of his arms around her. Tomorrow the man she loved would fight for his life against a monster. And she would have to watch. The princess watched the human fight unarmed. Her heart chose him at once. Part 4. The Grand Colosseum was full. Every noble house had sent representatives. Every merchant family had bought seats. Even the common workers had crowded into the standing areas along the upper walls. Word had spread through the city like fire. A human was going to fight Duke. Everyone expected blood. Everyone expected death. No one expected what they were about to see. Princess sat in the royal gallery beside her father. Emperor seemed amused by the spectacle. He had no particular love for Duke, but he also had no interest in the human's survival. To him, this was simply entertainment, a way to pass the time before his daughter's wedding. His hands were clenched in her lap. Her claws had cut small crescent moons into her palms. She did not notice the pain. The Duke entered first. He walked through the main gate with his arms raised, accepting the cheers of the crowd. He wore light armor over his scales and carried 2 curved blades, one in each hand. The metal gleamed with a faint blue light, a sign that the edges had been enhanced with plasma technology. A single touch from those blades would burn through flesh like paper. Cole entered from the opposite gate. He wore the same simple gray clothes from his cell. No armor, no weapons, just a human standing alone on the sand. The crowd laughed, some threw things at him. Cole ignored them all. His eyes were fixed on the Duke. The signal was given. The fight began. Did not charge like had. He circled Cole slowly, testing his range, looking for weaknesses. The Duke had studied reports of the first fight. He knew that the human was dangerous at close range. He would not make the same mistake. Cole waited. He turned with the Duke, keeping him in sight, but he did not attack. He seemed content to let make the first move. The Duke grew impatient. He feinted left and then slashed right with his plasma blade. Cole dodged, but barely. The blade passed close enough to singe the hair on his arm. The crowd roared. Pressed his advantage. He launched a series of strikes that would have killed any normal opponent 3 times over. His blades wove patterns of blue light through the air. He was faster than anything had ever seen. But Cole was not there. Again and again the blades cut through empty space. The human moved like smoke, always slipping away at the last moment, never quite where the Duke expected him to be. The fight continued for 10 minutes, then 20. The Duke's strikes grew wilder as his frustration mounted. He was not used to opponents who survived this long. He was not used to prey that refused to die. Cole took wounds, a cut on his shoulder, a slash across his ribs, a burn on his leg where a blade had grazed him. Blood stained the sand beneath his feet, but he did not fall. He did not slow down. He kept moving with that same patient focus in his eyes. Understood what she was watching. This was the endurance that Cole had spoken of, the human refusal to quit, the stubbornness that had allowed his species to survive a death world and conquer the stars. The Duke paused to catch his breath. His cybernetic enhancements were powerful, but they drained energy quickly. He had expected this fight to be over in seconds. Instead, he was tired and the human was still standing. Cole spoke for the first time since the fight began. He asked the Duke if he was getting tired. The crowd fell silent. A prisoner had just mocked a Duke of the Empire. Screamed in rage and charged. It was exactly what Cole had been waiting for. The human stepped into the charge instead of away from it. He caught the Duke's right wrist and twisted, using his own momentum against him. The plasma blade flew from the Duke's grip and skidded across the sand. Before could react, Cole struck. 3 quick blows to pressure points that they did not know they had. The Duke's left arm went numb. His second blade fell. Cole swept the Duke's legs out from under him, crashed to the sand with a sound like thunder. Cole was on top of him in an instant, one hand pressed against the Duke's throat, the other raised for a killing strike. The Colosseum was silent. 10,000 held their breath. Cole looked up at the royal gallery. His eyes found. She saw exhaustion in them and pain and something that might have been hope. He lowered his hand. He stood up and stepped back from the fallen Duke. Then he turned to the Emperor and spoke in a voice that carried across the arena. He said that on Earth, mercy was not weakness. It was the greatest strength a warrior could show. Any creature could kill. It took something more to spare a life when you had the power to end it. He said that he had fought to prove that humans were more than weak prey. He had succeeded. The Duke was beaten. The duel was over. He asked the Emperor for his freedom. Emperor stared at the human. His expression was unreadable. The crowd waited for his judgment. Before the Emperor could speak, Duke rose from the sand. His face was twisted with humiliation and fury. He drew a hidden blade from his boot and lunged at Cole's unprotected back. Screamed a warning. Cole spun. He caught the Duke's wrist again. There was a crack of breaking bone, howled in pain. Cole took the blade from his shattered hand and pressed it against the Duke's throat. For a long moment no one moved. Cole looked at the Duke with something like pity. He said that he had given a chance to keep his honor. The Duke had thrown it away. Then Cole stepped back again. He dropped the blade at the Duke's feet. He said that he would not become a murderer to prove a point, even for an enemy who deserved death. Duke lay in the sand, broken and humiliated. He would never recover from this shame. His reputation was destroyed. His honor was gone. In many ways, what Cole had done was worse than killing him. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some cursed, some simply stared in disbelief at the impossible thing they had witnessed. A human had defeated the greatest warrior of the noble houses. A human had shown mercy twice. A human had changed everything. Looked at Cole standing alone in the center of the arena. His wounds were bleeding. His body was trembling with exhaustion, but his head was high and his eyes were clear. In that moment, she knew exactly what she had to do. Her heart had made its choice long ago. Now it was time for the rest of her to follow. The princess watched the human fight unarmed. Her heart chose him at once. Part 5. Princess rose from her seat in the royal gallery. The crowd was still roaring, but she did not hear them. She walked past her father without asking permission. She walked down the stone steps that led to the arena floor. The guards moved to stop her, but something in her eyes made them step aside. She walked through the gate and onto the sand. 10,000 watched in confusion as the princess of the empire crossed the arena toward the bleeding human. She stopped in front of Cole and turned to face her father's throne. Her voice was clear and strong when she spoke. She invoked the ancient rite of declaration. The crowd fell silent. The emperor leaned forward on his throne. Even the wounded duke lifted his head to stare. The ancient rite of declaration was a law so old that most had forgotten it existed. It was written in the time of the first emperors, when the people were still warriors who valued combat above all else. The law stated that a royal could choose their own mate if that individual proved superior in combat to any challenger the court presented. Said that the human Cole had defeated every opponent placed before him. He had beaten a trained soldier in the pit of judgments. He had beaten Duke, the finest warrior of the noble houses. By the ancient law, she had the right to claim him. And she did. She chose him. The nobles erupted in outrage. They shouted that this was impossible. A princess of the empire could not choose a human. It was against nature. It was against tradition. It was an insult to every who had ever lived. Emperor raised his hand and the crowd fell silent. His face was hard as stone as he looked down at his daughter. He asked if she understood what she was doing, if she understood that she would be giving up her place in the succession, that her children would never sit on the throne, that she would be an outcast from the noble houses for the rest of her life. Met her father's eyes without flinching. She said that she understood. She said that she did not care about the throne or the succession or the approval of the noble houses. She cared about one thing only. She cared about her right to choose. The emperor was silent for a long time. The whole Colosseum waited for his judgment. Then something unexpected happened. Emperor laughed. It was not a cruel laugh or a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had been surprised for the first time in decades. He said that his daughter had more fire in her than he had ever realized. Perhaps he had underestimated her. He asked Cole to step forward. Cole walked to stand beside. His wounds were still bleeding, but he stood straight and tall. He looked up at the emperor without fear. The emperor asked him why he had shown mercy to the duke. He could have killed, and no one would have blamed him. Instead, he had spared the life of an enemy who had tried to murder him. Cole thought for a moment before answering. He said that killing was easy. Any animal could kill. But choosing not to kill when you had every right to do so, that was harder. That required strength of a different kind. He said that on Earth, humans had learned this lesson through thousands of years of war. They had learned that revenge only created more revenge, that hatred only bred more hatred, that the cycle of violence could only be broken by someone who was willing to be the first to stop. He said that he did not spare the Duke because he was weak. He spared him because he was strong enough to break the cycle. The emperor nodded slowly. He said that he had ruled the empire for 50 years. He had conquered worlds and crushed rebellions and executed thousands of enemies. He had always believed that strength meant power over others. Perhaps he had been wrong. Perhaps true strength meant something else entirely. He stood up from his throne and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the Colosseum. He granted the ancient rite of declaration. Princess was free to choose her own mate. The human Cole would not be executed. He would be given the status of a diplomatic envoy from the Sol system. The crowd did not know how to react. Some cheered, some cursed, most simply stood in stunned silence. Duke was carried from the arena by his guards. His political career was over. His reputation was destroyed. He would never recover from the shame of this day. Took Cole's hand. His blood was still warm on her scales. She looked into his brown eyes and saw something she had never seen before. Not just love, though there was that too. She saw possibility. She saw hope. She saw a future that she had never dared to imagine. Cole smiled at her. He said that this was not how he expected his capture by the Empire to end. Laughed. It was the first time she had truly laughed in years. In the weeks that followed, Cole became something new. He was not quite a prisoner and not quite a guest. He was an ambassador without a country, a bridge between two civilizations that had been enemies. He taught thee about Earth, about human history and culture and philosophy, about the strange, stubborn creatures who had climbed down from trees and eventually reached the stars. Some were horrified by what they learned. Others were fascinated. Taught Cole about the Empire, about its traditions and laws and the complex web of noble houses that held it together. She showed him the poetry she had loved in secret. She shared the histories that no one had ever cared about before. They learned from each other. They grew together. They built something that neither of them could have built alone. One night, 3 months after the duel, they stood together on the balcony of her chambers. The 3 moons of the hung in the sky like silver coins. Cole asked her if she regretted her choice. Considered the question. She had lost her place in the succession. She had been disowned by most of the noble houses. Her old life was gone forever. She said no, she did not regret anything. She said that for the first time in her life she felt free. She felt like herself. She felt like a person instead of a symbol. She asked him the same question. Did he regret being stranded so far from Earth? Did he regret falling in love with an alien princess? Cole pulled her close. He said that Earth would always be his home, but home was not just a place. It was also a feeling. It was belonging somewhere. It was being with someone who saw you for who you really were. He said that when he looked at her, he was home. They stood together in the moonlight for a long time. 2 creatures from different worlds, 2 hearts that had found each other against all odds. The princess had watched the human fight unarmed. Her heart had chosen him at once. And together they would build a new future, one choice at a time.